What is going on, everyone? Welcome into the reveal of the number 25 team in my 2023 NFL Power Rankings, as we are going to take a deep dive into the Indianapolis Colts, a team that have had a severe fall from grace, at least as far as where I ranked them last year. I had them as high as 10th last year. They endure a season from hell. Matt Ryan regressed all the way back to square zero. And now this team is really in a bit of a rebuild / transition. Now, I do think there is a lot of talent left on this team that, was a big reason why I ranked this team 10th to begin with last year, and is a big reason why I guess I am a touch higher on this team. A lot of people have been expecting the Colts for the last few episodes or so, so I'm really excited to look at some of these X factors here, some of the better players on this team that are still here, right? Like, they have a lot to build around. That's why I don't think it's a complete rebuild for the Colts, more of a reload, but definitely going to be a fun one, especially because we have a great guest today, the Zach Hicks, who is on the beat for the Indianapolis Colts, a part of the Locked On Colts network, writes for Sports Illustrated, super insightful about this Colts team. So it's a great interview. I learned a lot from him. You guys are going to learn a lot from him. So definitely stick around so you don't miss that interview. And before we do get started, if you could take just a second and hit that like button down below, it's a free and easy way to support my channel in an actual meaningful way. So I really appreciate it. Also, consider subscribing if you enjoy the content. We've got 24 more of these deep dives coming. You're not going to want to miss them. Join me on this quest for 100,000 subscribers. But without further ado, let's get into it. As always, we are going to start with this team's offseason, taking a look at all of their key departures and additions. And you're going to start by looking at that quarterback room where Matt Ryan is on the way out, heading to the booth, really. It was a disastrous season. He was a sitting duck out there, and it's going to be hard for them to not improve upon what they got from Matt Ryan last year. I even considered putting him in the list of unconcerning departures, and I think most Colts fans would be just okay with that. But really down the board, yes, they had some losses, but outside of the secondary, which is obviously important, this team really had a bit of an eye for an eye offseason. Everybody they lost, they upgraded with someone that they feel is going to be at least as good, if not better. So you've got Paris Campbell on the way out, had a solid season, got an extension, or a new contract rather, for the New York Giants, but they feel Isaiah McKenzie and Josh Downs can give them that role in the slot. They lose Yannick Ngakoue, which is another guy that was more of a name than anything last year. Definitely one of the worst years of his career. He's still sitting out there in free agency for a reason. They bring in Samson Ebukam, who is a chaos causer for the San Francisco 49ers. And then at linebacker, they do lose Bobby Okereke, but you got to remember, Shaq Leonard, formerly Darius Leonard, is still on this team. He only played about a game and a half last year. They're hoping to get him back. They also feel good about the existing talent that stepped up in Leonard's absence last year. But then, of course, you look at the secondary, where they are going to suffer substantial losses. That is going to be the one group where they, I think, will be worse. They lose Rodney McLeod, who, it sounds crazy to say this. I mean, Stephon Gilmore was great too, but other than him, Rodney McLeod was probably their second best player in the secondary last year. So that's going to be a big loss right there. They're counting on some youth to step up there. But also, we mentioned Stephon Gilmore, who they ship off to the Cowboys for a bag of peanuts. I disagreed with that as well. Isaiah Rodgers is really a blindsiding loss for them. I think if they... hard to know when the timeline was, but if they knew that Isaiah Rodgers was going to get into trouble with sports gambling, I don't know if they do ship off Stephon Gilmore. So kind of a double whammy there, honestly. And we'll talk about Rodgers' situation with Zach Hicks. It's not looking good, man. It really is not. So we're expecting him to miss at least this season for the Colts, or potentially not even be on this team moving forward. And really, what they did to replace those losses was 3 draft picks at cornerback. Julius Brents, Darius Rush, and one of my favorites, Jalen Jones. But that's a pretty tall task for those guys to fill into that slot. So it's going to be a big one for them. We'll talk more about that when we get into the roster. They're also flipping kickers, swapping Chase McLaughlin for Matt Gay. Should be an upgrade there. and punters. Matt Hack stepped in with Rigoberto Sanchez gone last year. He'll be back from injury. That's really all the major additions and losses, but you will notice not a ton of change on the offensive line. They're going to let Matt Pryor out the door, and Colts fans will take a big sigh of relief for that, and they actually get a huge pickup of Emil Ekiyor in undrafted free agency. Had to be some health concerns there. There's no way he should have fallen out of the draft. I had him as a late day 2, early day 3 guy who was a good guard for the University of Alabama. They're also going to let Ifedi Odenigbo leave, who played valiantly in his 230 snaps, but nothing they can't fill in there. And then they draft a really exciting draft, honestly. Do check out my draft grades video, Colts fans, if you haven't seen it yet. I raved about this Colts draft, but a handful of day 3 picks, some of my favorites being Ade Adebawore, Jalen Jones. They did spend that 4th round pick on Blake Freeland. And then they also bring in Taven Bryan to give them a 3rd guy on that defensive line with a little bit more experience. So certainly a busy offseason, but a pretty well thought out, well executed offseason with some question marks definitely with how they handled the secondary, which we'll talk about here. But before we do get into the roster, I want to talk about this coaching staff and what the schemes are going to look like and how this staff stacks up against the rest of the league. So they bring in Shane Steichen, who to me was a huge get for the Indianapolis Colts that obviously were in staff turmoil last year, to say the least. Everything that happened with Jeff Saturday and that whole disaster. You know, I do think when it comes to Shane Steichen having to come in and set a new culture here, that's really where he's going to have a lot of proving to do. Not that I don't think he can handle it, but I do think this was a bit of a locker room shit show last year, to put it lightly. Like, they have to come in and kind of set their feet again, reestablish that locker room chemistry, get back on the right track with player development and everything, because this was a really good culture not long ago, but with the way the owner stepped in and really shook things up, you know, Shane Steichen's going to have his hands full kind of settling everybody down, and reaffirming that benefit of the doubt really is what that overall coaching culture ranking does for this series. It's just a minor benefit of the doubt slider, and I think the Colts lost that last year, right? So they're going to have to get that back with Shane Steichen. He's going to have to prove that he's got the ability to be the CEO and not just the architect of the offense, which when it comes to that side of things, I'm very confident in the offensive coaching that the Colts are going to get here. In fact, looking at this whole staff, I think this is a really good coaching staff under the radar, honestly. So Shane Steichen, it isn't just what he accomplished with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. He was actually the offensive coordinator for Justin Herbert in his rookie year for the Chargers, and they let him out the door for some reason, right? And they've had their issues after Steichen left. But really what he did with Jalen Hurts is why you get so excited about him coming here, specifically where they pair him with Anthony Richardson, where he can implement the exact same playbook, which was honestly to me the most clean, easy to execute pro spread offense that I've ever seen. And it was a huge part of Jalen Hurts' success, where early downs it is leaning into the threat of the quarterback run game. Use RPOs, easy, quick hitting opportunities. And if they're not there, it's okay if you take off and run. And then on 3rd down, really drawing up good passing concepts, leveling against zones, because you're going to see a lot of zone when you have a mobile quarterback, easy leveling progressions with deep shot looks on the outside as a fallback. This is going to be a very, I don't want to say simple offense for Anthony Richardson to understand, but when it comes to making things as basic for your quarterback as you possibly can by NFL standards, I think Shane Steichen is excellent at that. So I am very confident that the coaching is going to be at least good here, with the potential for Steichen to emerge as one of these, you know, top 10 young ascending offensive-minded head coaches, right? Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell. There's a long list of guys just like Shane Steichen that have climbed the ranks rather quickly in this league. But honestly, I didn't even realize until I sat down to put this together that they also have Jim Bob Cooter, who I'm a fan of Jim Bob Cooter. I'm very reminiscent of what he accomplished in 2016 with the Detroit Lions, where he helped Matthew Stafford really change the way he approached the game. I think that was the year Calvin Johnson retired, and helped Matthew Stafford, even without Calvin Johnson, have the best year of his career. Now, his ability to adapt and be the full offensive mind fizzled out. He was very young. I think he's still 39 years old. Let me double check that. Yeah, he's 38. So he's a very young offensive mind. Definitely took his learning curves as teams adjusted to him, and it eventually flamed out in Detroit. But he climbs back up through this sort of Eagles coaching tree. He was in Philadelphia with Nick Sirianni and obviously Shane Steichen here, and got the job with Doug Peterson as his passing game coordinator in Jacksonville. And man, I was so impressed by the play calling in Jacksonville last year. I think it's a loss for Jacksonville that Jim Bob Cooter is now designing passing concepts for the Colts. So I think between these two guys, ranking them good is like as low as it could be in that tier 3 of good offensive coaching. I think this could be great here with this duo. And I feel very solid about Gus Bradley as the defensive coordinator. I love the continuity. I've always loved his scheme, the Seattle 3, where they're going to be aggressive up front with stunts and really play physical, not just in the trenches, but outside. They are not afraid to press and jam and get in your face. There's some criticism certainly to be had about the fact that, yeah, he's going to run cover 3 like a lot. He's one of the only remaining real, like, true Seattle 3 schemes in the league. You look at Robert Saleh and D'Amico Ryans under him and some of these other kind of Gus Bradley proteges, Dan Quinn, another one. They've been a little bit more adaptive to the modern game, and I think that at times teams can really key in on where the weak spots in the zones are going to be, know the tendencies, know when stuff is coming. And that's going to be the main criticism of Gus Bradley. But when it comes to player development and knowing what players fit his scheme and how to coach what he runs, there's something to be said about that as well. And this was not a horrible defense last year, despite having a lot of injuries and issues out there. So I'm still very confident in what Gus Bradley is going to bring to the table as a defensive coordinator, even if he's not like an elite mind these days. So overall, I think they have the right guys for the job. Like I said, they are going to have to kind of reestablish the culture here and get things back on the right track as far as the locker room is concerned. But yeah, they got a good staff here in Indianapolis. Before we go any further, I got to tell you guys, Underdog Fantasy just continues to up their game as the best place to play fantasy football. I've already loved their daily pick'em contests where you can string together lineups selecting player stats to go higher or lower, and if you hit up to 5 of those selections, that's 20-1 payouts. And that's not just NFL. If you're going to MLB games, it's a great way to make sure you're keeping your eyes on the game and fully invested. They also have the biggest best ball competition in the world with Best Ball Mania for this year, where you can take out your phone, sign up with promo code TFG, of course, and you can do your draft right now. The best part of fantasy football to me is the draft, and with Best Ball, you can do as many of those as you want. You want to try to get your hands on Anthony Richardson to have that big year right now? You can do that at Underdog via Best Ball. And now they even have season-long pick'em where you can go in and select higher or lower on season-long stats as well. I love Underdog Fantasy. They've been so great to work with, sponsoring this channel as well. So you can go support the sponsor of this series at Underdog Fantasy. Support my channel as well if you sign up with promo code TFG, and they will match up to $100 on your first deposit. That's $100 of free play at Underdog Fantasy with promo code TFG. Go check it out. I know you guys are going to like it. But now the moment you've all been waiting for. Time to talk about Anthony Richardson here for the Indianapolis Colts, as we are going to open up the roster preview, starting with the passing game outlook and, of course, the quarterback, where they are going to rank 31st. But I do need to have the same discussion and add the context that I did with Justin Fields' ranking, where in this series, we have the beauty of that quarterback run game multiplier, which we will take a look at later. And it's very generous for what Anthony Richardson's going to do to open up the run game here. And just like I said with Fields, if we were doing like your quarterback tier maker things, talking about the full picture of what the quarterback brings to their team, this 31st ranking doesn't capture that whole picture. Right now, for this portion of the video, we're just looking at what he's going to bring as a passer. And I don't think you can really argue that if you're projecting where he's going to start coming into the league, Anthony Richardson should rank towards the bottom of NFL starters as far as what he's going to bring to the passing game. There's no way around it. He was a boomer bust prospect who had 1 year starting at Florida and was not particularly productive. He had issues when it came to accuracy and consistently getting through his progressions and making the right reads. That's why he was boomer bust, right? If he was clean as far as, doing all the mental side of things, he would have been up there with Bryce Young, right? And probably above Bryce Young. But it's not controversial to say that he just has a long way to go as far as learning the mental side of quarterbacking. He's a young player. It's understandable, right? But it is what it is. Now, I do want to say that I have a 26-minute video essay that was my best performing video of all of draft season. I'm sure many of you have already seen it, but if you have not seen my breakdown on Anthony Richardson, there's nothing I can't say here that isn't said much better and shown with video evidence in that video. So if you have not seen my video on Anthony Richardson titled Anthony Richardson's Film is a Magical Disaster, I couldn't recommend pausing this video and going to watch that right now and then coming back enough. But at the end of the day, Anthony Richardson, the second he got drafted, became the most physically gifted quarterback the NFL has ever seen, above Josh Allen, Michael Vick, John Elway, Lamar Jackson. Yes, the most physically gifted quarterback in the history of the NFL is now a member of the Indianapolis Colts before he ever played a game. I don't care saying, I don't mind saying that. His arm, ridiculous. It's going to be one of the 5 to 7 strongest arms in the league immediately, if not top 3. The way the ball zips out of his hand is absurd, even for a college level player. And then you pair the fact that he's 6'4", 240 pounds. He's basically in Cam Newton's body or Josh Allen's body in terms of size, but he has 4.4 speed with quickness and running creativity, where he's like a bigger Justin Fields from what we saw last year with the speed and the elusiveness. So yes, that is why you take Anthony Richardson. I love that they took the gamble. But again, if he didn't have questions about what he can be as a passer, he wouldn't have been the 4th pick in the draft, right? He would have been above Bryce Young, who was a phenomenal quarterback prospect and the number 1 pick in the draft. So there's really not a ton to truly say about Anthony Richardson. Of course, I did the film breakdown, and you can get into the true details of what he needs to work on, and that's why I suggest just to go watch that video. But with Richardson, it's not a matter of upside. It's not a matter of did they make the right pick. The risk is well worth the reward with Anthony Richardson. But he is going to have to climb as far as getting through his progressions, making the right reads, not making mistakes. It's all just stuff that's going to have to come. And I do list him as the starter here for the season. I don't think it's out of the question that Gardner Minshew is out there in September. But I think as soon as this team feels like Anthony Richardson has the vernacular down with the playbook, is comfortable at least knowing what his first read is with all the passing concepts and getting to the huddle, like I said, the vernacular, getting the play in, getting the line of scrimmage, playing with confidence, to me, that's really all it is. I think this team feels very good about the design of this offense, working with Anthony Richardson's skill set, even if when you get to 3rd and 8, he's going to be a little bit more erratic as a rookie. I think they feel much better about what the structure of this offense is going to look like with Anthony Richardson's skill set, strictly because of what they accomplished with Jalen Hurts, who has all the same tools and honestly some similar knocks as a passer. If you go back to like what I said about Hurts last year, this is a system that's going to help Anthony Richardson play now and develop in time, just as we saw with Jalen Hurts. So if he weren't with Shane Steichen or another coach that has proved to be good with like mobile quarterbacks that do have passing deficiencies, I would say, I'd probably want to sit him for a year, but he could not have gone to a better spot. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I think he will like have his lumps. Obviously, I'm ranking him as the 31st passing quarterback in the NFL right now, and I don't even know if he's going to be there week 1, but I think there's going to be plenty of signs and plenty of reasons for optimism heading into year 2. And he's going to make some plays and help this team win games as well. Let's not act like this is going to be a complete disaster. There's going to be a lot of good performances. And as long as the defense can play well and the first and second down stuff and the run game, which we'll take a look at, is going to be potentially elite here for the Colts, to tease that a little bit. As long as those things are in place for Richardson, you can feel pretty confident that A, they're going to win some games this year. They're going to be a pain in the ass to play, but B, you're building something special here into the future. So I love the pick, love the upside. Cannot wait to watch Anthony Richardson play in the NFL with NFL coaching. We will hit on Gardner Minshew just for a second. And I think he's like the best backup quarterback in the NFL, like that you're really not truly considering as a starter. He's kind of on that fringe, but I'm a big Gardner Minshew fan. I did a film breakdown on him himself back when he was balling out for the Jags. But yeah, I mean, he's just got those physical limitations, right? He doesn't have the strongest arm to really attack like tight man windows where you need to have those incredible throws. And he just isn't much of a scrambler. So when he's out there, teams are not afraid to run man coverage against him. And, he's pretty good at picking zone apart, but it's just, he doesn't have the biggest arm to hit tight zone windows either. So, like, there's just physical limitations there. I think the mental side of thing is very good. And if they don't feel like Richardson is comfortable just running the offense right away, Minshew is coming over from Philadelphia and can keep this thing afloat, and they can definitely compete with Gardner Minshew in there. He's actually projects as a better passer right away than Anthony Richardson. Sam Ehlinger, I was so kind of disgusted with what they did last year. Honestly, he was so tough to watch. I know he makes a couple plays a game with his feet. He's got a decent arm, but like he just can't read a defense. And I thought they did Matt Ryan a little bit dirty, even if he took his struggles. It was very clear that Matt Ryan was a better option for them than Sam Ehlinger. So I just think that was all a part of, the joke that was the 2022 Indianapolis Colts. We'll see if he makes the team. But yeah, 31st at quarterback. We'll talk a little bit more about Richardson with his feet momentarily. But with the weaponry here, it's weird because I kind of like this group, but they do rank 27th. I think you have some pieces that are still climbing and need to prove themselves at the next level, but I think the players that they have and their skill sets are perfect for this offense. So you do have Michael Pittman, who is by far the most established studly receiver that they have. I still think Pittman is a 2, right? Like at some point, you're either going to want Pierce and Josh Downs to also emerge as like legit 2s. And you can roll out there with 3 2s and be very happy about that, like 3 high-end 2s like Michael Pittman. But he doesn't have necessarily that vertical ball winning from the perimeter that you want to say he can be a true X. Now, they'll play him at X, and he can work the sidelines a little bit, do back shoulders, but the way they really use him is working inside from the perimeter, whether that's crossing routes, dig routes, post routes. He is an intermediate demon as far as attacking that part of the field. He is not afraid of defensive backs coming down and cracking them after the catch. He'll hold on to the ball. He'll brush off tacklers. They get him going on that part of the field for a reason. He's kind of like an oversized Amon-Ra St. Brown, both guys coming out of USC, just that tough, physical, don't care if they get hit. And he's going to be really good with a lot of the stuff they did with A.J. Brown, with the dig routes and those, a big asset that the Eagles had. If you just think back to that impossible to defend Eagles offense, being able to rely on first and second down on A.J. Brown winning on a slant, boxing out the corner, trying to get in front of him, and catching the ball in tight oftentimes tight coverage on those RPOs and being reliably there available for Jalen Hurts, Michael Pittman's going to be really good at that. So I think that's a really good scheme fit right there. Again, never going to be an elite receiver, but I think he can be a very good fit for what they have here. And then you have Alec Pierce, who is going to be that deep threat. And for him, I love the skill set. Shane Steichen wants to push the ball downfield. He's in a lot of ways going to do a lot of what Quez Watkins did for them, where he's going to help take the top off the defense, and they're going to scheme up looks where he is the first read or he's the alert. And if they get single high coverage, Anthony Richardson is going to have a green light to let it rip to Alec Pierce, who can stack corners, be a dominant ball winner on the outside. The thing is just going to be consistency with him. I think he does need to improve his overall route running if he's going to threaten with digs and hitches and comebacks and stuff, so that defensive backs don't just always play off and know that the deep ball is coming. But I also think as far as catching the ball through contact, it's going to be something he needs to show improvements on. Not necessarily like those vertical jump balls on the outside, but if he's got a draping defender on a slant or a dig route, I did feel like he struggled a little bit to box that guy out and use his size to his best advantage. So a lot of promise in his rookie year. The arrow is pointing up, but definitely still needs to get better. And there's a lot of potential there and a great role fit for him. It's just going to come down to them getting that consistency out of him. And then you have your slot gadget type. And they didn't necessarily have that in Philadelphia. You had a little bit of like A.J. Brown just was so good in that short game. They didn't have to do a lot of this. But man, both Isaiah McKenzie and Josh Downs, I think will rotate at least early in the year. But talk about guys that can get open quick and early, and I think Steichen's going to add some different mixes to the offense to cater to these guys' skill sets, whether that's whip routes, where Josh Downs especially was just lethal at UNC. So you can run play action and have Josh Downs act like he's going to block down, and all of a sudden you can, boot out the other way where he's sprinting to the flat. Like, there are going to be some creative options, and Isaiah McKenzie can do that stuff as well. Isaiah McKenzie can be lined up in the backfield as a running back too. So like, there is a variety of creative paths with both these players, Isaiah McKenzie and Josh Downs, where, they're going to be able to open up the playbook even more. I love that these guys are here. I do think Isaiah McKenzie's a good player, good enough to take snaps away from Josh Downs, as high as I am on Josh Downs in that first season. But man, I'm excited for Josh Downs' future. Like, I don't know if he's going to have 70 catches, 1,000 yards, and 6 touchdowns this year, but I think he can be that guy as soon as they ask him to be it. I mean, his skill set at UNC was complete. I already mentioned the route running. He's really shifty after the catch, super reliable hands. He never drops the ball, and he's good at tracking the deep ball. So it's not just the short stuff. They can get him going on, running up the seam, running a deep corner route, running a deep cross. Like, he's going to be a vertical threat if schemed up the right way. He doesn't have amazing speed, but he is fast enough. So, like, man, I didn't see a huge gap between, like, Zay Flowers and Josh Downs. I thought Zay was a little bit faster, and that was the biggest difference, and obviously that matters. But I didn't see a 2-round difference in those two players, right? The fact that they got Josh Downs, who I was mocking to teams like Dallas in the first round before they got Brandon Cooks, for example. Like, that was, to me, probably the biggest value and the biggest steal outside of maybe their 4th-round pick in Ade Adebore. So, like, they had an insane draft. Cannot wait to see Josh Downs in this offense and what Shane Steichen's going to do to open things up for him. And beyond that, you got Ashton Doolin, who's also a deep threat. They did give him a decent contract extension, 2 years, $7 million. That's fine for a quasi wide receiver 4. He's kind of your insurance policy for if Alec Pierce struggles as that deep threat, kind of in that Quez Watkins mold. They're actually very similar players, honestly. Doolin's not quite as fast, but he'll definitely make this team and be a good backup for what he does. They also are clearly looking for that because you got 3 veterans here. Brashad Perriman, Vincent Smith, and Malik Turner, all in that kind of true deep threat mold. I don't know that those guys make the team because you have Pierce and Doolin there. They're curious with Michael Strachan, who's a 6'5", big-bodied guy that they don't necessarily have that type of size here. And then they also pick up Juwan Winfrey, who was made some plays for those horrible Green Bay Packers depth charts in the early LaFleur era in Green Bay. But I think it's probably those 6 and maybe one of those 3 veterans between Perriman, Smith, and Turner sneak on. There weren't really any UDFAs that popped to me with the Colts. So while I can't rank these guys terribly high because it's an unproven group, I'm pretty optimistic with what they have at wide receiver, skill set wise, working and developing together. And that also comes with Jelani Woods, who blew up at the end of last season, which was really fun to see for the draft nerds out there, because Jelani Woods was so fun coming out of Virginia. 6'7", 265 pounds. He was honestly almost identical to how we viewed Darnell Washington, who got drafted, obviously, to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think Jelani Woods a little bit more fluid, honestly, than Darnell Washington. Not much more fluid, but similarly. And both those guys, for me, got Martellus Bennett comps. And I think Jelani Woods can be Martellus Bennett after what he showed last year. I think the blocking still needs to come along, but he was winning tough catches. They were using him as a red zone threat. He's a decent enough route runner. Like, that's the biggest difference between Woods and Darnell, is Woods can kind of put on a stop and, change left or right a little bit. And he's pretty quick as far as like stretching the seam and kind of being loose in his hips a little bit to slip past linebackers to threaten that part of the field. So, I mean, you've got a 6'7" tight end who can run over the middle of the field. Like, yeah, Anthony Richardson, if he can get that intermediate accuracy down with his ball velocity, like, good freaking luck just trying to stop him. So he's got immense upside, and I'm really excited to see what he can be in this offense. Still needs to clean up. Like, he had some drops and some balls that like kind of popped out of his hands in contested situations. Like, you want to see him be dominant there. But yeah, I mean, other than that, and the blocking, like, things are going to come along for Jelani Woods. And when they do, holy hell, this is going to be a dynamic, really foursome at wide receiver. And then fivesome if you include Jonathan Taylor out there in the backfield. I mean, Taylor's an interesting discussion because last year was just a disaster for him, right? The injuries, the team fell apart, the offensive line couldn't stay healthy, and just really wasn't there for Taylor in any regard. But you go back a year ago, and he was showing awesome flashes in the receiving game, not just with his hands, but some of the route running he was doing. They were lining him up from the slot, running crossing routes, using that speed that he has. He's a good threat, even if he's not the most complete back. I think they feel very comfortable with what he can do as a 3-down back. And at least taking checkdowns and drawing up screens for him, like, they're not going to have to put him out as a slot wide receiver to run routes. They've got Isaiah McKenzie and Josh Downs to do that stuff. So just doing running back stuff out of the backfield, he's going to be more than good. So if considering they ranked 27th, it's a very optimistic discussion. I think this group is like, whenever Anthony Richardson clicks in as a passer, this group is going to grow together and eventually be at least a top 20 group. They don't have that dominant alpha receiver, right? And maybe someday they'll look to get that. But I don't know if they necessarily need that when you have such a group of complementary skill sets, which matters so much. We need to hit on a little bit more of the depth at tight end and running back. And Mo Alley-Cox isn't necessarily depth, I think, at least to start. Him and Jelani Woods will still be rotational starters, which is pretty much what they were at the end of last year. I expect that to continue because Mo Alley-Cox is a really physical blocker, and he's not a putrid receiver. He just doesn't have the athletic, like, speed and separation ability of Jelani Woods, and he's not as big, right? But he's still pretty good in contested ball situations. So they still like Mo Alley-Cox, and they're going to be able to get into 12 personnel with these two guys and do a lot of creative stuff there too. So having him as a quasi-starter backup type is really good. And Kylan Granson, right? Like, talk about complementary skill sets, man. They also have that ideal prototype, like, big slot hybrid tight end. Kylan Granson is not a run blocker. He's not an inline blocker, but just like the Eagles had in Grant Calcaterra last year, they can do occasional looks where he's a mismatch problem. You can show 12 personnel. He can do enough blocking from the wing. But talk about someone that can get lost on crossing routes and just pulling away from linebackers. Just another weapon for Shane Steichen to work with. You got a couple more of those types too, with Will Mallory and Andrew Ogletree, who unfortunately missed last season with an injury. So there was some hype for him building. They have a really athletic tight end room. I can't imagine they keep 6 and go with Farrell Brown or Caden Smith, but those guys have had their stints as backups in the league at times too. Will Mallory definitely got some hype because of the 40 time, and anytime you have speed at this position, there's going to be some potential to tap into there. But for example, I like Kylan Granson more coming out. I liked a guy like Grant Calcaterra more coming out. Mallory just has a lot to learn, and he's buried pretty deep here, so my expectations are pretty low, but it was a 5th round pick. Anything you can get from him is going to be house money, so I'm fine with the process of taking him, but I have seen some hype for him, and my expectations are basically 0, and we'll see what happens, So definitely a fun tight end room. It's unproven for the most part, but certainly upside and creativity and a versatility of skill sets available to them. As far as the backup running backs are concerned, keep an eye on Deion Jackson if they don't want Jonathan Taylor to, play every snap, which I'm sure they won't. Deion Jackson stepped in and showed a lot as a receiving back. He's buried, right now he's listed very low on their depth chart. I thought he showed a lot of good flashes in the receiving game last year. You look at that Jacksonville game, he had 10 receptions. They were trying to get the ball out quick, and he showed secure hands. He was making guys miss. I think he can run routes. He was a superb, underrated athlete coming out of Duke, who was just completely underutilized and screwed at Duke by bad run blocking and bad passing offense. So I think there's something there in Deion Jackson to kind of be a poor man's Nyheim Hines here, but they're really looking for that type of player. They draft Evan Hull out of Northwestern, who is definitely in the same ballpark as far as underrated athleticism. He was utilized much more in the receiving game. Don't be surprised if Evan Hull takes over that role as Nyheim Hines. I think it's going to be a competition there, and Jake Funk as well, out of Maryland. It's kind of funny. We used to do NCAA rebuilds. We did a Duke one and we did a Maryland one, and both Jake Funk and Deion Jackson were stars for us. So the TFG diehards are going to appreciate that. Zach Moss is going to be much more of that Thunder backup type to Jonathan Taylor. You're going to want to keep your eyes on those previously mentioned 3 as far as who's getting work in the receiving game. Funk and Hull are not as proven as Deion Jackson, but whoever ends up the guy, I think you feel pretty good about who your scat back can be. It's a good room as far as competition is concerned. So I know it was a pretty optimistic discussion for the 27th room. It's one of those deals where there's a lot of good groups of weapons in the league, right? Like teams are attacking these skill groups and trying to build skill sets that complement each other in a much better way than we've seen maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But there's no reason this can't be a really good group of weaponry as early as this year that helps this team do what they want to do. It's just a matter of proving that out and earning those high rankings, right? I love the process of what they've done here. But let's now move on and talk about the rushing threats here. So they're going to rank 4th in the league at running back, and they'd be 3rd if I felt a little bit better about their backup, because our 3rd ranked running back room has a much better backup than Zach Moss. Not that Zach Moss is horrible, but the backups for our 3rd ranked team are pretty damn good. It's very tight, as you guys will see when we get there. But Anthony Richardson is going to rank tied for 3rd and could easily be 1st as early as this year. It just comes down to, is he there the whole year, right? Is Gardner Minshew in there, who's not a rushing threat? That's a slight ding on the team's QB run multiplier. And then, is everything there, right? Do they use him correctly? Is he an insane runner? Like, it just has to be proven that he's the best, but very easily could be the best rushing threat at quarterback in the NFL this year, tied for 3rd in the league with Jalen Hurts as a rookie. So obviously this is for the people that say the Colts are ranked too high. Here you go. Good fucking luck trying to tackle and stop Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson complementing each other. You are now going to have arguably 2 of the, 8 to 10 hardest players in the NFL to tackle in the league in the same backfield, with the math opening things up with the read option, right? One less guy to get their hands on Richardson, one less guy to get their hands on Jonathan Taylor. and both guys with explosive 4.4 speed that can go the distance. This could easily be the best run game in the NFL this year. And when we get to the overall rankings, they're going to be third right now in the run game. The only questions here are Jonathan Taylor coming off a down year where he dealt with injuries. Can he get back to that 2021 level? I'm very optimistic that he can, and it's kind of funny that we have an up arrow next to a player that is already graded for me as an elite running back in the NFL, but I think he could easily kind of grab that crown as the best running back in the NFL. When you talk about his vision, his ability to change directions with his size, his speed to hit home runs, his power to run through guys, I think the world of Jonathan Taylor. But you have to raise minor concerns about last year. But in a contract year, I think Jonathan Taylor has a very good shot to be like the number one fantasy running back. But again, pairing that with Anthony Richardson is just unfair. We've all seen the highlights. We've seen the combine. We know what he can do as a runner. And this has a serious potential to be something truly generationally special between these two guys. If they can stay healthy, if the blocking can be just adequate, look the hell out. Now, beyond Jonathan Taylor, it's not as dynamic, right? You have Zach Moss, who's a bruiser. He's a contact balance guy. Did a valiant effort when JT was hurt last year. I don't think he's a bad running back at all, but he's just kind of just a guy as far as running back rooms are concerned. The Bills included him as a throw in the trade for Nyheim Hines for a reason. He's okay. You have Deion Jackson, who's much better in the receiving game than he is in the run game, and you can really say that about Evan Hull and Jake Funk as well. Jackson just doesn't have good vision. He doesn't have good power. So JT's got to stay healthy, and you're not going to give him 100% of the carries, right? So that's why there's a slight gap between him and the third running back room, because Zach Moss is still going to get 20% of the carries here or so. But overall, I don't think there's a ton of analysis needed to point out just how special this combination could be. Let's talk about the offensive line. Definitely an interesting group because you have your three cornerstones of this offensive line that you are very secure about. Obviously, Quentin Nelson at left guard, who hasn't been the same the last couple of years. I don't think he's the best guard in the NFL anymore. He's the most fun with his personality and his highlight blocks. But I think you could argue the two guys in Cleveland have more highlight blocks than Quentin Nelson at this point. But he's still one of the 5 best guards in the NFL. He is an elite run blocker. You do see him lose in pass protection, both stopping his feet and getting beat by power. Not often, but compared to the elite guards in the league, you do see it. More than you would think, maybe, based on his hype. But I'm not trying to talk down on Quentin Nelson. He's amazing. He's a key reason this ranks as the 11th group in run blocking and still solid in pass blocking at 23rd, despite some pretty big question marks. The second cornerstone, I would say, is Braden Smith, who had a great year last year, locked up TJ Watt, although he was coming off the injury. But, Braden Smith is just a star right tackle. He's a balanced player. He's super physical against the run. He's athletic. He played guard at Auburn, but had the athleticism to step outside and play tackle. He's got really accurate, strong hands in pass protection. You feel great about what you got there at right tackle. And then Ryan Kelly is just a good starter at center. He isn't the strongest guy, isn't the most athletic guy, was a first-round pick, though, for his consistency at Alabama, and he's mostly been that for the Colts. He does have his losses. He doesn't create an immense amount of push in the run game, but you know exactly what you're getting there. He's a leader of the O-line. He's going to, this team does, for what it's worth, pick up stunts really well compared to a lot of these previous offensive lines we've watched. And I think having the continuity here, especially with these three, is really good for that communication. So that's a slight bump right there. There's really not a bad thing to say about that trio right there. It's one of the better groupings of three that you could pick for offensive lines around the league. Now, you have some question marks at left tackle and at right guard, especially at right guard. But let's start with Bernard Raymond, who we know is locked in as the left tackle for this team. And Raymond's fascinating. He was someone that many viewed as a fall in the draft to the 3rd round. That was closer to where I was comfortable with him. I thought first round hype on him was a little bit crazy, but I thought 3rd round was too late for him. I had him as a true 2nd round guy, someone that was an older prospect, played at a lower level of competition, and was relatively new to football. But you love the athleticism, you love his mentality in the run game, and I think when it comes to him as a run blocker, things are only going to get better there, certainly. I do want to see him continue to put on some functional play strength. That's my biggest thing with him. Even in the run game, not always getting that push on the bigger defensive ends that he has to face, but especially in pass protection. He graded out much better as the year went on. You watch the tape, there were still a lot of moments where guys are, getting their pads inside, driving him back, really putting a lot of pressure on Matt Ryan, who actually, as the year went on, did a better job stepping up and getting that ball out, which I do think helped his PFF grades, for example. There was a lot of improvements that were made. I thought his hand placement was better. I thought his foot speed was better, not getting beat by inside moves and to bend to the outside. It really is that anchor holding up against power rushers. Can it take a next step in year 2? And if it can, you're looking at a franchise left tackle. If it doesn't, you're looking at more of a replacement level starter, someone that you're probably looking for an upgrade long term. I don't think he's going to be a huge problem, though. And, they got half a year of good Bernhard Raimann last year. You hope you can get a full year. You look at how bad this offensive line was last year. It was especially bad in the first half of the year, where Bernhard Raimann was playing some guard. When he was at tackle, he really struggled getting up to speed with the NFL level. And at right guard, they had Danny Pinter and Matt Pryor were absolute turnstiles. I can't stress enough how bad the right guard play was for them for the first 10 weeks of the season. They turned to Will Fries, and I'm not going to act like he was locked down. In fact, he took his lumps, to be sure, but he was substantially better than what they got from Matt Pryor and Danny Pinter there. So I do think a full year of Will Fries alone, forgetting about any development he shows as the presumptive starter with a more sound offensive line around him, forget about the development, just getting a full year of what Will Fries did last year is going to be an upgrade from what they had. But I do think there's reason to believe Will Fries can evolve and turn into a solid guard, honestly. I thought he's a good athlete. He showed some play strength in the run game. I was actually impressed with what he did there. And another year of development next to Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith, Quentin Nelson, where they can help him with double teams when need be. But I think the pass protection can come along there. Certainly not a guarantee, and that's going to be a key reason why they do rank 23rd in pass protection, right? You're going to have question marks about that. And if this thing goes to shit, that right guard spot is going to be a reason why, right? It's a legitimate concern, but I'm cautiously optimistic that between him and picking up Emil Ekiyor in free agency, they can get this thing straight. And that one of these two guys can be an adequate replacement as a weak link, right? Ekiyor, to me, was a very sound prospect. I think he belonged in the 4th round. Now, obviously, there were medical concerns with him that caused him to fall. Right now, I believe he's out there competing. He was a really technically sound guard. He understood his assignments. He had good hand placement, good athletic ability. Did lack a little bit of play strength. Didn't always move guys off the spot. And held up, didn't always hold up well in one-on-one anchoring situations against power rushers. But I think it's very reasonable to say that he can compete with Will Fries, and the winner of that competition, there's reason to believe there's optimism that, you can get an adequate starter at right guard. That's going to be the biggest question mark really for this offense outside of what does Anthony Richardson look like. Now, when it comes to run blocking, I think it's going to be a really good group, which is just only going to help complement what we already just talked about with this ridiculous group of runners. All these guys can run block. Even Will Fries, I was marginally impressed by what he was able to do. So it's really just comes down to pass protection. Don't be a turnstile. Don't have Anthony Richardson running for his life. But even if he is, you've got a lot more mobility back there to extend plays and make stuff happen. You're going from Matt Ryan, who was the worst mobility last year, even worse than Tom Brady, to Anthony Richardson, who just might be the best as far as making sacks missed. and all that stuff. So it's all complimentary here. I do got to talk about the depth. The depth's not great, especially compared to a couple of these most recent teams. They are really going with the youth approach, especially at tackle, where it's probably going to be Blake Freeland and Jake Witt keeping 4 tackles there. Freeland, I would be very concerned if he got out there in his rookie year. I'm just concerned about his long-term outlook in general. He's towering height at 6'8", but doesn't have great arm length and really got exposed against power in college. I don't know how he fixes that. If you're tall with short arms, that's an instant leverage disadvantage, and he doesn't have great core strength. So I see the athletic ability. There are run blocking snaps where he shows that insane athleticism, and there's upside there, but to me, that would be more in a wide zone scheme anyway, which is not really what it's going to be here. It's going to be a lot more inside zone and head-up blocking stuff. Not that they won't stretch things outside, but yeah, I'm just not very optimistic for Blake Freeland. The guy I'm much more interested in long-term is going to be Jake Witt, who literally came out as one of the most athletic tackle prospects ever. I'm not making that up. Like, just on paper, this dude's workout was absurd, and his background is really fascinating. He went, I can't even remember the schools right now, small school guy, right? Somewhere in Michigan, and went as a basketball player, ended up quitting basketball, was a student for a year or two, walked on the football team. I can't remember if it was at that school or a different school, but walked on the football team as a tight end, was a okay tight end for a couple years. Then in the middle of a game, they say, hey, go play tackle at the end of the year. And then fast forward to his final year, I think it was his red shirt or like 5th year. He started all year at tackle, was second team all conference, really brand new to the position, brand new to football. Uber athlete, interesting background, very reminiscent of like what Jordan Mailata was for the Eagles. 7th round flyer. We'll see where it goes in a couple years. Definitely keep an eye on Jake Witt long term. This year, you don't want him sniffing the field. But I do think they keep him on the roster because I think someone would steal him off the practice squad. You got Danny Pinter, who we mentioned was a turnstile earlier. Wesley French hasn't played yet. I think he was a 7th round pick for them. And then a couple of veteran guys that have hardly played in Shepley and Hambright. So, yeah, I think it's probably, as far as depth, they keep Freeland, Witt, Pinter, and Ekiyor for sure, and then probably French and maybe Shepley. But, yeah, depth's not great. They got to keep these guys healthy. That's for damn sure. So the offense as a whole, this is the most polarizing offense in the league, where they're going to rank 3rd at run game and way towards the bottom in passing game at 31st because of the Anthony Richardson question. The wide receivers have got to come along, and the right guard pass protection question mark, right? And left tackle. So, like, there are question marks. But if things hit, if you are okay at right guard, if Anthony Richardson is a little bit better than we think as a passer in his rookie year, naturally these receivers will develop with him. This could at least be top 20 this year, but as far as projecting it to start the year, I don't know how you can project this all that high. It's just a ton of question marks, right? Run game, though, I don't really have a lot of questions. I don't really have any at all. I think the play design is going to be good. I think you have an elite threat at quarterback. I think you have an elite threat at running back. I think the run blocking is going to be really good. This could easily be the best run game in the NFL. And if that happens, that's when we're going to look now to this defense that we got to break down and say, this team can win some games and surprise some people, right? So, again, that's really the main reason why a lot of people expected the Colts to be revealed already. That run game is a chance to be truly special. Let's look at the defense, though. There's definitely some question marks here. We already kind of hinted at the secondary, but we're going to start with the defensive line. And I do like this group. I don't think there is necessarily, I don't think this is an elite group by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's a very good group. They're going to rank 19th in pass rush and 6th in D-line run defense. They're stout and big and strong and deep up front. I really think they're going to be good in that phase of the game. As far as just controlling the line of scrimmage in the run game, this team's going to be a pain in the ass to play against. You better be physical if you're going to play the Colts this year. But let's go through it. So, the pass rush outside of DeForest Buckner definitely has its question marks, right? But you do have DeForest Buckner, who, watching this team back last year, was a reminder he gets double teamed on like every snap. Like they are sliding their line his way. Gus Bradley can use that as a threat to scheme up stunts. I think that's why they bring in Samson Ebukam, who is just the perfect stunt man as far as literally running stunts, games, slants, all that stuff. He can either blow up the guard and allow DeForest Buckner to loop around, or DeForest Buckner can blow up the tackle and Ebukam can loop around. These guys are going to be really complementary. I think we do see more stunts this year. They couldn't do that necessarily with Ngakoue because he doesn't have the core strength and the power that Ebukam has. So I do think it's an upgrade there. But back to DeForest Buckner, he's got his signature swim move. If you leave him one-on-one, he's going to slip by you. It's kind of automatic. He's got the quickness, those long, lanky arms that with his power, he can just kind of slip blocks. It's why you got to double team him. The better guards can know it's coming and, step in front of it for sure. But for the most part, that's a signature move. That's how he wins. He does have some power. He's not Chris Jones or prime Fletcher Cox or anything like that. But if he gets you one-on-one, he can take you for a ride to the quarterback. They'll also line him up on the edge where he's an interesting matchup guy. He's the prime reason this ranks 19th for pass rush, because the rest of this group is, as we'll talk about, nothing special. As a run defender, he is an upright player because he likes to go to that swim move so often. So if he does get double teamed off the ball, he'll give up some ground, but he's still really just instinctive against the run. He finds the ball, he slips blocks, he's got this ridiculous reach to at least slow down runners. So he's still a good run defender, even if he has his deficiencies. He's also, one thing teams have keyed on, he's really aggressive at getting upfield. So you can get him on a trap or a draw and kind of flush him out of his gap a little more than you'd like, but he can still make plays against the run. So that's DeForest Buckner. But beyond that, I think you got to talk about Grover Stewart next to him, who's one of the premium run-defending nose tackles in the league. He's an absolute brick shit house. He eats double teams for days, and he doesn't go anywhere when teams try to drive him off the ball, and that opens things up for these linebackers to have success. So even if Grover Stewart isn't grading out well or making plays himself, you got to understand the math of what he brings to the table. There's not a lot of defensive tackles that can truly impose themselves on double teams, and Grover Stewart is one of them. And he'll even slip them occasionally and make plays despite the fact that they're asking him to two-gap all the time. But he is integral to what they do, and he has got to stay healthy, by the way, because they don't have any other noses on this D-line. Taven Bryan, Eric Johnson, Agim, I think all of those guys are under 300 pounds. Adebawore, if you count him as an interior player. They got to make sure Grover stays healthy. I'm a little bit surprised they didn't pick up a, John Jenkins or Andrew Billings type just to ensure that they can have that player. So definitely, if Grover goes down, just keep that as a note in the back of your mind. If you're like, he's not playing this week and you got a running back going against the Colts, that run defense goes very quickly from 6th to in the 20s probably because of his math and what he changes up there. But and the lack of depth with a big-bodied guy like that. As a pass rusher, Grover doesn't bring a ton to the table. He's persistent. He can get there. He can slip blocks, but he doesn't have that, force equals mass times acceleration, right? And he doesn't have the acceleration side of things to blow guys backwards. So he can work his way and use his strength and foot technique to get there, but it's a slow burn, and usually the ball's out by the time he gets there. We'll visit the interior depth in a little. Actually, no, let's just bang out the interior depth now, because there's not a whole lot to speak of. You have Taven Bryan, who's got to play 4-eye or 3-tech. He had a decent year for Cleveland. He was the best interior player that Cleveland's interior defensive line had last year. I thought he was okay. I like the signing because last year they didn't have any veteran help on the inside. I think it's an upgrade to bring him in. But again, he's not going to be able to two-gap like Grover Stewart does, certainly. But he's a nice rotational piece that if they're running a lot of stunts and just kind of going with that Niners approach of let's just cause chaos and slant and get a bunch of athletes in there to muddy things up, he can definitely be a part of that. Eric Johnson was really hard to watch last year. In his rookie year, I thought it was unfair that they asked him to play so early. He just was not ready as a late day 3 pick. Really bad play strength. Didn't really know what he was doing. Again, I really wish they had better interior depth. McTelvin Agim, I do like his get-off and ability to kind of push the pocket as a rusher, but he really hasn't shown anything other than that, and even when he's shown that, it's been in stints. So it's a dangerously thin interior defensive line. They're really counting on Buckner and Stewart to eat a lot of snaps and stay healthy, and that is a big ask. On the edge, they are substantially more deep, however. I see 5 guys that can make an impact on this defensive line. And you got to keep in mind as well that Tyquan Lewis, Dio Adeyingbo, and Adebore, their 3 depth pieces, all can line up as a 3 technique or a 4-eye and help out taking some of those snaps in pass rush situations and getting Grover Stewart off the field to upgrade that pass rush there. So that's all going to be a part of the scheme and the rotation there. But let's start with the starters. We kind of hinted at Abukum already. He just plays like a bat out of hell every single snap. He's 6'2", fully rocked up, 255 pounds, plays with leverage, tenacity, play strength, core strength, balance, and is strangely instinctive and disciplined considering his play style. He has a unique ability to find the ball. He knows where it's going. I don't know if it's film study or reaction time on the field, but even if he's not a traditional run defender where he's going to, stand up, stack his hands inside, find the ball, shed it at the point of attack, that's not really his game. And occasionally he's going to guess wrong and miss the run and all that stuff. That's why he's a little bit more hit or miss. But there's players with his play style that are very hit or miss, and Abukum hits more often than he misses. I'll say that. He's just a freaking headache to go against. Play in, play out. I'm a big fan of Samson Abukum. I think the Niners are going to miss him. And that's just as a run defender. As a pass rusher, you do have to use him correctly with the stunts. I know Gus Bradley wants to do that. He was absurdly stunt heavy in his last year with the Raiders. I didn't think he did it enough with the Colts. He certainly ran stunts, but to me, signing Samson Abukum tells me that Gus Bradley wants to get back to that a little bit. And I already described how annoying it's going to be trying to stop Buckner and Abukum. And, we raved about Kwity Paye in last year's deep dive being a similar skill set as far as the quickness and ability to be nasty on those stunts. So really, I see now on both sides of the line, in our heads, let's say we'll replace Grover Stewart with either Tyquan Lewis or Dio Adeyingbo for now. You now have 2 guys with Buckner and this other 3 technique that can be the disruptor for these stunts. And with Kwity Paye next to him, he's even more loopy and agile and quick than Samson Abukum. It didn't all come together last year, though. He had a really big down year as far as winning those one-on-one setups, and that's where he's got to take a bigger leap. But if they're running more stunts, just by default, this can be much better than the 19th pass rush. But we need to see that all come together and the execution all be there. But I definitely like the vision for this pass rush. I do really like what Kwity Paye brings as a run defender, however. He's got the length and the play strength and that Michigan discipline up front, so he helps contribute to this being a really difficult group to run on. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the interior depth. Dio's fascinating to me. He is still trying to figure out how he's going to win and where he needs to be and all that, but he has really explosive wins because he's 280 pounds. He's got lightning quick get off. He's got quick feet. He is a rare athlete. And when they play him as a 5 technique, naturally he's going to defend the run well. He's just difficult to move off that spot for a lot of offensive tackles. So, again, I like the scheme fit. I don't know if I ever see a full-time starter in Dio Adeyingbo, but I did see his upside coming out being that Danico Autry type of player who the Colts were familiar with a couple years ago. I still think there's a world where he can be that. And talk about the perfect guy for disrupting the line for looping pass rushers. That was Danico Autry at his best. So, again, I cannot stress enough the potential for this to be a really annoying pass rush, better than the 19th pass rush, if they really lean into running those stunts and games up front. Because you want guys with get off and power on the inside, and you want guys with quickness and agility on the outside, and power on the outside. in case you want to loop those interior guys and, run reverse stunts. So really love the vision here. I like Tyquan Lewis as a player as well. I think he can really eat snaps wherever they need him to play. He can play a little bit of 4-eye as an interior player. He can definitely come out, play 7 technique as a wide 9. He's got speed and get off. He actually has a little bit of a bull rush in there. If he can get that first step and really load up and take guys for a ride. It's been inconsistent, but it's there. But his length and discipline against the run is definitely an asset, and he's going to play a significant amount of snaps for this defensive line and contribute there. And then whatever you get from Adebawore is going to be house money. I mean, I don't think they felt like they needed him, but when he was there in the 4th round, they were like, yeah, we got to take him. This is one of the most athletic. I mean, this is a theme for the Colts, right? They're taking athletes. And I know it sounds redundant at this point, but it really is true with the amount of freaks that this team took. Adebawore, at 6'2", 280 pounds, ran a 4.49. Like, that's Trayvon Walker type of stuff as far as combine ridiculousness. And it's not just that. His 3-cone and all of it was insane. And he was used as an edge at Northwestern. I think if he's going to win as a pass rusher, it's going to be as a 3 technique, where he didn't get a ton of looks to do that at Northwestern. But at the Senior Bowl, he comes in, plays 3 tech twice in one-on-ones, wins with a cross chop. And you can't win with a cross chop if you don't have insane athletic tools, but also really good technique. I think that was extremely promising for Adebawore. And I think you would be silly not to put him in there on 3rd and long. If you don't want to run stunts, which I think he can absolutely run stunts, by the way, because he's got all those previously described traits. But if you just want him to try to work a guard with a cross chop and let him develop in that way while also getting after the quarterback, like, there's going to be some flashes there. So another group where I'm like, I like what they did. They definitely stack up as a good pass rush, but they're very dependent on Gus Bradley using these guys correctly with stunts, because outside of DeForest Buckner, they don't have a lot of guys that you can necessarily expect to line up and win one-on-one, right? So that's where the cross of my optimism and my pessimism meets right there. I don't know if Kwity Paye takes that next step. Grover is going to be out there on 3rd down, where he's just not a great pass rusher. Abukam's a good pass rusher, but he's much better off of stunts than he is as a one-on-one rusher. So I suppose I didn't mention Titus Leo. I don't know if he even makes the team. If he does, I don't expect him to play. He was an athletic 6th-round flyer. They got some veterans in Avery and Kareem, who at this point I'd be pretty surprised if they made it. Avery maybe as a linebacker makes it and is like a rushing specialist, but yeah, there's your defensive line. It's a good group, really good in run defense, big part thanks to Grover. But as a pass rush, they're kind of middle of the road. Then we get to the linebackers. Big fan of this group. Had a really fun time watching the film on Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, who stepped up last year in a big way. I really don't think they're going to miss Bobby Okereke. Not as a slight to Okereke. Good player, good signing for the Giants. But both, I mean, not only do you get Shaq Leonard back, hopefully. That's something I talk about with Zach Hicks. But I actually want to start with Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed in kind of a weird roundabout way. Franklin was really sound against the run, secure tackler, strong player, can take on blocks, good speed to the sideline. Nothing special, but just a good all-around linebacker. Was a guy that was a team captain through special teams. Everything I've always said about linebackers, just give them a few years to develop and understand the game. And a lot of these guys with the right work ethic will get there. And Zaire Franklin clearly has that. He's got enough physical tools. I think he's just a good starter, right? I think he can be everything Okereke was supposed to be as their second linebacker last year. But then you talk about EJ Speed. This was the guy on this Colts team. As I reviewed the film, I was like, God damn, I had no idea that he was so good. Like, I'm just kind of talking and filling space right now so that I can play all of these highlights that EJ Speed had as a rotational linebacker. So Speed was a special teams demon. He was blocking kicks, covering kicks, just didn't have an opportunity to get on the field, right? You had Franklin, Okereke, Leonard. There's another guy, I can't think of his name right now, that went to Chicago that was ahead of Franklin. So like he, in the 4 years on his rookie deal, couldn't get on the field. But last year, the Leonard injury opened the door for him to rotate in. And my God, all this guy has done is ball the hell out wherever they ask him to play. It started with special teams, started at linebacker last year. Now, there wasn't a ton in coverage from EJ Speed. They didn't ask a lot of him in coverage. But what he showed as a run defender was crazy instincts, rare play strength. Like, he's a slender build. I think he plays at like 225. But really good play strength to shed blocks. He's bendy to kind of work in and around blocks. Man, I really think EJ Speed can be a surprising kind of Dre Greenlaw-esque breakout if they ask him to play. And maybe that's overly optimistic. But, you know, Shaq Leonard has some injury concerns coming into the year, durability concerns with his back and ankle stuff. Man, even if Leonard doesn't play, I think you can roll with Franklin and Speed, and it might not rank 8th in run defense and 18th in coverage like we have it right here, but they can more than get by just with those two alone. But then you put Shaq Leonard into the mix, and, you know, he's coming off a very substantial surgery, and durability's been a concern for him in recent years, but you know, we kind of know what Shaq Leonard is at this point. He's gone through the cycle of being called overrated by myself and many people. I eventually kind of gave up on that. The main reason I called him overrated was, you know, most people will agree he's not a lockdown coverage player. He's got good zone feel. When he gets his opportunities, he's going to get his hands on balls and all that. But he does have his losses in coverage, right? He's not athletic. Really, like, he's just slow for modern day linebacker. He doesn't have fluid hips to turn and run, and they ask a decent amount of him in coverage. So, like, he gives up about as many yards in coverage as most linebackers, but he makes up for it with his playmaking ability and his zone feel, right? Really instinctive run defender, will knife into the backfield, get a lot of defensive stops. But the main reason I called him overrated was the biggest thing he's known for is forcing fumbles. In the first couple of years, I was like, this is not sustainable. Forced fumbles are completely fluky, but you look at the way that Leonard does it, and you start to believe it's not fluky. He has perfected his craft. He takes boxing lessons. He has the hand-eye coordination and the instincts to punch that ball out with strength and precision, and he does it with intent, and you can count on at least four forced fumbles, which are game-changing plays. Absolutely game-changing plays. I don't give a shit if you are getting cooked in coverage 2 plays in a row. If on that third play, you change the game when they're in the red zone and you force the fumble and fall on it. Like, that is a tough thing to quantify, but watching a game, you know the impact that a fumble recovery has. And you can count on that like once a month, at least, from Shaq Leonard. So if he's out there, he's going to change the play with his ability to turn the ball over. And it shows up not just with that, but in zone. Like, he does bait quarterbacks, and he understands what teams are trying to do to attack him. He can't always get to where he wants to, but when he does, he's got secure hands, and he's getting that ball. So you can count on, like every other week, Darius Leonard is going to force a turnover. There's not a lot of players in the NFL that are doing that for you, and turnovers are king, man. So you really hope he can stay healthy. It's not just, you know, the turnovers. Like, he is a leader for the defense. He has a infectious energy and kind of inspires that physical play throughout the rest of the defense. So I just hope he can get back out there healthy. It's been a fun evolution for me, a guy that I once called overrated all the time. I think we can all acknowledge his deficiencies while also admiring the player and the things that he does really well, right? So this is a really fun linebacking group. I think a lot of people are going to overreact to the loss of Bobby Okereke. I don't think they give a shit. I think they're going to be just fine. They don't have a ton of depth beyond that, but they've developed these guys really well, right? So JoJo Domann is kind of in that EJ Speed mold, where he's an athletic guy that needs to grow and learn. He's entering year 2 now. He would be the guy I would kind of keep my eye on, along with Cameron McGrone, who was a young player coming out of Michigan, but I believe tore his ACL. I could be wrong about that, in his rookie camp. So he was drafted by the Patriots in the 5th round. Physical player, not the most fluid mover or anything, but you know, he could develop here. Grant Stewart, not the best athlete. I never really saw much in him, but he's here. And some undrafted types there. So Yeah, I mean, they could definitely surprise with depth, just as they have with Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed. But until we see that, you can't really count on that. EJ Speed, definitely a breakout candidate for this Colts team. Let's get to the secondary. We know this is a group that's going to take their lumps this year, almost certainly. They're going to rank 31st in the league behind just the LA Rams, who are in a whole different world of hurt there. But, yeah, I mean, there's no way around it. You've got a lot of youth and a lot of guys that are going to have to prove that they can play at a position that is just very difficult for rookies to step in. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of people arguing with them as 31st. Maybe Isaiah Rodgers is not as bad as we think, and this can be a slight bump, but I still think they'd be 31st maybe with Isaiah Rodgers. I'd have to look at it, but I really don't think Isaiah Rodgers is going to be there for this team. Let's get through it. You got Kenny Moore in the slot. You know what you're getting there. Leader of the defense, really physical run defender. You love what he brings to the table in that regard. Coverage, much better in zone than he is man. And last year really got exposed in a lot of man-to-man situations. I think teams did a really good job putting him in a bind where he just doesn't have the size to bump and run with guys, and he doesn't really have the long speed to hang with guys on crossing routes. So I want to see them do a better job not leaving him kind of on an island with slot receivers as much. Get these safeties downhill to help a little bit more. But he's still going to make plays, right? He's got really good ball skills, good zone IQ. When he's in position in man coverage, he's gonna contest the ball. So he's a good player. He's the best thing they have, though, and that's really not saying much. In the last couple of years, he's definitely fallen off from being viewed as like that best slot corner in the league. He's still very good, but he is not the best slot corner in the NFL right now. Not even really all that close. But he's locked in as your slot. No questions there. You got Julius Brents coming out. I guess if you're a Colts defender, someone's got to change their name every year now. But I thought it was a good pick. I thought, second, third round was a good spot for him. The only real thing with Julius Brents is like the long speed isn't always there, but these cover three schemes have really protected corners with long speed concerns. And I think, it's a very good scheme fit for him to at least be a good player for them. He's got to prove it, but I'm not necessarily worried that he's going to suck. I think he will take his lumps. He's going to have to learn the system and learn when to take his risks. And I don't know if he's going to make a ton of plays in his first year. Like, I don't know if he's going to be Tariq Woolen playing in a lot of cover three. But it's possible, I suppose. I really liked his reactionary quickness. When they ran off coverage, he was really snappy and understood route concepts. So there's a lot of reason he can be a good starter in the NFL. Reminds me a lot of like Jalen Johnson, for example, who had a good year running this Matt Eberflus style system in Chicago last year. I think that's in play for Julius Brents, who was a second round pick. Got a lot of length. And just has to prove what he can do. Love what he does in run defense, physical player. I'm optimistic that he can be a good player. I don't know that he's going to be like an alpha number one guy, though. But the third cornerback spot is where you're going to have massive question marks. And it's a weak link position. Teams can really target you if you've got a guy that can't hang. And there's reason to believe that Darius Rush could be the best corner out of this group in time. But his final year of tape, his tape in general, there's a reason he fell to the fifth round despite a lot of pre-draft hype and his athletic tools. He's not a sticky coverage player. At least he wasn't when the games were on. He was in Mobile for the Senior Bowl, and you're optimistic about that. He was really good man-to-man there. But a converted receiver turned cornerback, someone that didn't run a lot of zone coverage in college. The Colts do want to run a lot of zone. Does he grasp that stuff right away? I don't know. And even just some of the reactionary quickness that showed up as an issue on film, how much of that truly was improved at the Senior Bowl, or was it just 5 or 6 reps of guessing right? I don't know. But he's got upside. He fell to the fifth round for a reason, though, right? So we'll see what he can do. And beyond that, I really like Jalen Jones. I did not think he belonged in the 7th round. In fact, I think his tape and how good he is right now is probably better than Darius Rush, especially in a zone system where I think Jalen Jones is a really heady player. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Rasul Douglas, where he's not the fastest guy or the quickest guy, but he's sticky. He's in the right place at the right time. He's physical. He's smart. I will not be the least bit surprised if Jalen Jones wins out this job and is better than Darius Rush in his rookie season. So I'm going to call my shot a little bit there. I know I'm listing Darius Rush, but I easily could have gone with Jalen Jones, and my heart of hearts tells me Gus Bradley is going to go with Jalen Jones, at least for week 1. So keep an eye on that. And their depth beyond that is scary bad. Like, is this team really not going to pick up a veteran to compete here? Because Dallas Flowers, don't think he can really play. Tony Brown's been around the league. Kevin Tolliver's been around the league. This is a really bad group of corners. There's no way around it. The safety group is fascinating to me. You have 3 guys with upside. So Rodney Thomas, Zach Hicks, who we're going to have on momentarily, is really high in Rodney Thomas. There's going to be a lot of discussion about him. He ended up playing a lot of free safety for them at the end of last year, and right now it looks like he's going to be their starting free safety. Was kind of drafted as more of a corner who made the switch to safety, still very much learning the position. And, he had some interceptions, some fortunate interceptions. He was around the ball. As we know, that's a little bit fluky. His coverage was very up and down. So it's just going to be a matter of learning that risk assessment from the free safety position. I really liked what he showed coming downhill and tackling, though. So there's reason to believe he can become a quality starter. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like Jalen Thompson for the Arizona Cardinals, who kind of surprised like Rodney Thomas has. So maybe a nice comp, really athletic guy with some good speed coming downhill. That'd be a great, deal if Rodney Thomas could turn into Jalen Thompson. And then it sounds like Julian Blackmon and Nick Cross are going to be in an open competition for the true strong safety role here. And I would expect Julian Blackmon to win that. I mean, Blackman's a really good tackler. He's shown that he can be a really good tackler. He's taken his inconsistencies and put them on film a couple of the last years. But as far as, being aggressive, coming downhill, willing tackler, and getting off blocks, I think he can be really good at that. He played a lot more slot corner at Utah, so he's used to playing around the box, and maybe he can re-break out because his rookie year was awesome. Or I guess it was his second year, right, because he tore his ACL in his rookie year. Am I right about that, or is it the other way around? But he did have one really good year, got a ton of hype, and has basically been an abysmal coverage player since then. So big year for him, contract year, and he's got to fend off Nick Cross, who was flushed into playing time last year and just wasn't ready. He was really struggling to be in the right place at the right time in coverage. You could see the speed show up in very small flashes, but a young player, 20 years old, dealt with some injuries last year too. So, it's the sky's the limit for him. It's just a matter of, as a third round pick who this team traded up for, it's just going to be a matter of, proving out his upside, which is obviously a theme for this secondary. Does have size and was a good tackler at Maryland. So you hope that can be a part of his game as someone that's competing for strong safety. I do think if they go dime looks, their cornerback depth is just so poor that it's probably, Julian Blackmon playing more of a cornerback spot with Nick Cross as kind of a dime linebacker. I would imagine that's how they're going to do it. But they're a team that wants to stay in nickel with those linebackers, so it's going to be more of a 5 defensive back defense for the most part. As far as the safety depth, they got Henry Black. He's kind of a special teamer. He's not a good coverage player. And then Daniel Scott, unfortunately, he's done for the year. That was a big blow. Like, this team had some plans that fell through, right? Isaiah Rodgers, Daniel Scott was a 4th-round pick with a ton of athletic ability. I think they were hoping that Scott could push Rodney Thomas and ensure that they get a good free safety there. He's not going to be available. He's going to be 26 by the time he's ready next year. So that was a real bummer that he got hurt. It's not a great outlook for this secondary. I think this scheme protects the outside corners in cover 3, kind of makes their responsibilities simple and allows them to play fast, and you hope that can elevate these guys. But obviously, this is a group that's going to hold back this defense, and you just hope you can walk out of this year saying, couple of these guys had a big year, whether that's Rodney Thomas or Nick Cross or Julian Blackmon, Rush, Brents. These guys all have upside, but are all almost entirely unproven outside of one good year from Julian Blackmon. So it's just wait and see, really. Let's recap the defense. So that secondary is really going to drag down the pass defense. They're going to rank 30th. Now, hopefully the coaching can elevate this group and it isn't that bad in the pass defense. But luckily, they are going to be a very difficult group to run against, where they're going to rank 5th. I do think, for what it's worth, this defense is going to make things very difficult on you. They're not going to make it easy to run, and you're going to have to come with a good game plan to defend these stunts. And there is a world where this game plan comes together, and the pass rush is much better than 19th because of the scheme, and that will elevate the defensive backs in turn and make quarterbacks make decisions under pressure and give these guys playmaking opportunities to turn the ball over. That's kind of the hope. A lot of question marks for this Colts team, a lot of established talent as well. The question marks are really spread out on both sides of the ball, where the offense ranks 26th, the defense ranks 25th. That spits out the 25th overall team. They do have a great special teams. Matt Gay should be an upgraded kicker. They get Rigoberto Sanchez back. They've always covered kicks well, and Raymond Ventrone, their special teams coordinator, is one of the best in the league. So expecting a very good group on special teams yet again. I will say losing Isaiah Rodgers as their designated return man is a slight ding. I don't know if I would have had them as the elite special teams there, but it is a slight note that they're going to have to find a different return man. But yeah, let's tie a ribbon on all this thing. This is a team that does have a lot of strengths, right? I think the run game is potentially elite. It could be sensational what they could accomplish here. I think the coaching overall, you can have a lot of optimism that this is going to be a much better coach team this year. You got a quarterback that in Anthony Richardson isn't just going to help the run game, but even when things aren't going well as a passer, he can still run around and make some plays, which is something they could not say about the quarterback last year. Defensively, they have a very solid, deep front seven. As we mentioned, they're going to make things hard on you, and special teams are going to be really good. Weaknesses are going to be the true drop back passing game. Does the quarterback execute? Does the offensive line hold up? Do they have receivers that can separate down the field in those situations? It's all a big question mark there, right? And then the secondary speaks for itself. But let's wrap our side of things up with the schedule before we get to Zach Hicks and the interview there. So their over-under is 6.5 wins. I didn't think, as far as AFC schedules are concerned, it was horrible, because they play the NFC South, which is not a great division, and they lucked into getting the Rams at home as a part of that rotation. So that, and they have the AFC South, which is probably the weaker of the AFC. So for an AFC schedule, that might play into the Colts' hands, to the point where if things do, if a lot of these question marks do go on the right side of the coin, they might be a worse team than, like, you know, just to handpick a few, like the Ravens or the Browns or the Jets. They might be a worse team than them, but because of the schedule, they might end up with a better record, right? So it's something to keep an eye on for sure. Like, I have them favored in 4 games here. The Rams at home, the Bucs at home, the Raiders at home, and the Texans at home. All teams that ranked below them. For an AFC team to have that all as home games, that's gonna help them quite a bit and give them a real chance. I also didn't think they had any, like, horribly difficult games. They don't have, like, they have at Cincinnati, which is obviously difficult, but they don't have to, like, go to Kansas City. They don't have to go to Buffalo. A lot of those, like, top AFC teams are either not on the schedule or they get them at home. So at 6.5 wins, I think they get to 7. I do. I think the run game is going to make, at least in some matchups, like, there are just defensive fronts that can't handle what the Colts are going to throw at them in the run game. And I think that's alone is going to win them some games. Now, other teams that can stop the run and force this team to beat them through the air, maybe they're a little bit more matchup dependent in that way. But I think if you were to bet here, I'd go over. There's a lot of risk involved, a ton of question marks, but I do see this as about a 7-win team. A team that I'm slightly higher on. Many people expected them to be revealed already. Here they are at 25. Now, division odds at 5-1, little bit ambitious there. You're really counting on Anthony Richardson having that really surprising rookie season. It's not out of the realm of possibilities, but it's basically saying that has to happen. Do I think there's a 20% chance that Anthony Richardson is good enough to basically outlast the Jags and the Titans, who I think are underrated this year? Probably not. It's not the worst bet in the world. If you're a huge Anthony Richardson believer in year one, go ahead and make that bet. I'm not going to stop you, but I'm not making that myself. But let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with the ranking? Did I convince you of this ranking? Do you think I'm crazy? All of that, let me know in the comments down below. Please do drop a like. I really appreciate it. And here we go. We are going to bring in Zach Hicks. This thing is getting really long, so I do appreciate you guys diving deep into the Colts. Appreciate Zach for coming on. I'm going to say goodbye now and roll the interview. We'll see you for the next one. Peace out. And now I am so thrilled to welcome back onto the deep dive, Zach Hicks. Year 3 now. You were a part of the first wave of guests when we started inviting people on. So always one of my favorite conversations every year. Zach is working for Sports Illustrated and is now part of the Locked On Network with the Locked On Colts podcast. So make sure you go check out his stuff. But thanks for coming on, Zach. Excited to talk about some Colts that hopefully have a little bit more life now than about 5 or 6 months ago.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is the lowest you're going to have them ranked, though, in the time we've doing this. You've always been pretty high on them compared to a lot of people. And, we couldn't complain that you were pretty high on us, but we kind of let you down each of those seasons. So now we're trying to not let you down a third time, even with the lower ranking, which I'm assuming a lower ranking this year.
Yeah, geez, that'd be nice. I mean, that was one of those teams that people are posting in the comments I had the Commanders at 28, for example. I saw a comment that was like, "Don't worry, Commanders fan. He ranked the Colts 10th last year, so you're going to be just fine." Definitely a season sent from hell for the Indianapolis Colts. But they are going to come in 26 this year. A lot more questions, certainly, and we're going to get into some of those questions. But first off, I wanted to revisit the draft a little bit. A really fun draft for Indianapolis, a bunch of picks, a bunch of athletes. And I wanted to have a little bit more of like a back and forth conversation about some of our favorite draft picks. And I wanted to get from each of us our favorite day 3 pick, who we think the most impactful day 1 rookie will be, and then who is going to be the best rookie from this draft in 3 years from now. So I'm going to give you the first pick with the favorite day 3 pick. We'll start there.
Yeah, and it's fascinating with the Colts because they had so many day 3 picks in this class. It was like 8 or 9 guys that they had on day 3 of their entire draft class. And there's so many guys to like here. I was really, really intrigued by a couple picks, but for me, the highest rated guy that I had they took on day 3 was actually their 5th round pick in Darius Rush, cornerback from South Carolina. I thought that this was a guy who could go round 2, even, as high as round 2. I mean, you just don't make players like this, 6'3", 6'2", 6'3", over 200 pounds, running a 4.3 40, elite special teamer in college as well. Former wide receiver, has the ball skills to play corner, a lot of pass breakups at the college level. Like, I get some of the concerns, but for me, it was like, look, NFL, you saw last year you missed on Tariq Woolen. Like, you as a whole league missed on Tariq Woolen, let him go all the way as late as he did. I'm not saying Darius Rush was the exact same profile, but like, to me, I thought it was a no-brainer that he was going to go day 2. Like, especially after the Tariq Woolen thing just happened, I thought there was going to be an overcorrection and they were going to take that high upside corner there on day 2. But him falling to round 5, I was really shocked by that. I think the NFL really missed there, and the Colts getting him there in round 5 when, we're going to talk about it here in a minute, but now they have an even bigger hole at cornerback. And a guy like Darius Rush, you can grab him in round 5 and maybe start him as a rookie. He might start this first season here. And I honestly, of all round 5 corners, I actually think he's the most capable one of doing that. There's a lot of good things there on his college film, and I think he's going to be a pretty good pro. So getting him in round 5, I was floored that he fell that far, and I think he can be arguably one of the better picks in this entire class across any team.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting one, with the arrow certainly pointing up after, switching from receiver and What he did at the Senior Bowl, just kind of like opening some
Yeah.
eyeballs. So yeah, that's a great pick for your favorite day three. And among a list of very difficult options, honestly, I was kind of hoping you would take one of my two, so I didn't have to choose. But I gotta go with Adi Tamiwa Adebawore. I mean, I thought he could have snuck into the end of round one. The easiest way to say this is a tweet that Colts fans will very much like to be seen revisited that I had was like, explain this to me like I'm an 8-year-old. Trayvon Walker goes with the first overall pick because of his combine performance, and Adebawore goes in the 4th round. Like, how does that even add up if you are drafting for physical traits? I mean, this guy has absurd tools at 280 pounds. But it wasn't just that. Like, he had legit pass rush moves when they moved him inside at the Senior Bowl. He pulled off 2 cross chops down there in Mobile. I'm like, okay, you put him in there as a 3 technique. He's got not just the physical tools, but the skill set to make that work. And he's also going to a great system that, Gus Bradley had Michael Bennett way back in the day. Like, he's going to understand, like, okay, I could put him as a 5 tech on early downs, and then we're going to slide him inside and just have him cause chaos. So I think he went to the perfect spot. And to get him in the 4th round was just insane. I thought, no way he gets out of round 3. So that's going to be my favorite day 3 pick. All right.
No,
I will go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's gonna be hilarious seeing him next to Dio Adengbo. Like, two of the freakiest, like, in terms of length, explosion, and size, and all that stuff. 2 of the just freakiest athletes in the last couple seasons to play that kind of three tech defensive end hybrid type role. And now the Colts have both of them, giving them both to Gus Bradley. And something I love about Adebawore and that selection there is, worst case scenario, he's probably a Taven Bryan type guy. Taven Bryan guy, rotational guy that bounces around the league a little bit. If you take that in round 1, like Taven Bryan was taken, or like maybe a Trayvon Walker, I think Trayvon Walker is a little better than that. But like a Trayvon Walker, that's not good. But if you take that in round 4, I mean, you take that all day,
Yeah, absolutely. Another good comp is like Milton Williams for Philly.
That's another super explosive player out of Louisiana Tech, right? A couple years ago.
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, you are back on the clock, so to speak. You get to pick who is the most impactful rookie out of this class.
Yeah, I think when you look at you got to look at opportunity and who's going to be there on day 1. It comes down to the 2 day 2 picks. It's Julius Brents or Josh Downs, because those are the guys who from day 1 are probably going to be the starters at their respective positions. So I'm going to go with Josh Downs here.
Nice.
Because no matter who that quarterback is, if it's going to be Anthony Richardson or Gardner Minshew there in week 1, they're going to need that slot receiver who can get open, just uncover quickly. And a big thing I've been writing about this whole offseason is, if you look at that Shane Steichen offense in Philadelphia, Devonta Smith was a huge, huge aspect of that because he was their quick win wide receiver. He was the guy, when in doubt, we needed someone to create separation, get open, and convert on 3rd down. And Josh Downs may not be this explosive vertical threat. He might not be this perfect wide receiver, but if you need a guy to get open, in this entire wide receiver room, that's Josh Downs. Michael Pittman Jr., average separator. Alec Pierce, for all the things we love about him, he's not this elite separator. He's a go ball guy. He's a go ball, jump ball type guy. Josh Downs is that player where you can isolate him on the backside in those 3x1 sets, and you're going to say, go get open for me. Or if you're going to do spread and you're going to do 5 guys out wide, you're going to put him as strong side 3 and have him work against a linebacker or against a safety and just get those quick wins over the middle. So Josh Downs, again, it might not be a 1,000-yard season as a rookie or anything crazy like that, but we could see him push 50 to 60 catches in year 1 just because they need someone who can get open whenever. And that's something this offense has been missing for years. It's just that quick win, get open wide receiver. And Josh Downs is finally going to be that for them.
Yeah, I loved that pick. Like, man, that was insane. As long as he beats out Isaiah McGuire for like the slot receiver role, he could be like, I don't know if he's going to be like offensive rookie of the year or anything like that, but I don't think that's insane to even bring his name up into that convo. I really struggled with most impactful. I mean, obviously Anthony Richardson is going to be a fun pick there.
Yeah.
There's going to be plenty of Anthony Richardson conversation. So I'm going to, we'll just brush that aside and pick someone else. And I'm going to I'll go with Juju Brents, or I guess everybody just the second you're an Indianapolis Colt, you have to change your name now is just the thing. But
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, you look at that opportunity at the cornerback spot and a system that's going to work really well for him. We know Gus Bradley wants big physical corners. I have a hard time seeing him being a worse player than what Brandon Faison was for them last year.
We hope not.
And
Gosh.
yeah, I was reviewing the all 22 before getting ready for the Colts, and I was like, God, he's bad. And the funny thing is, I just did the Raiders, so I missed out on the opportunity to kind of trash him a little bit because he might be starting for them next year. But yeah, I mean, I didn't think he was a perfect prospect, but he has the size, obviously, and he has a lot of that reactionary quickness you look for, and he's physical. So I really have a hard time seeing him being a bad corner for this team. He's going to step in right away, and it's hard to find. Although it feels easier these days to find starting corners as rookies. There's been a lot of great classes lately, but I think he's going to step right in and really not be a problem for this defense.
Yeah.
So that's pretty damn good for a rookie corner.
Yeah, my biggest joke with him is he's that type of corner I always fall in love with that just never works in the NFL. Ahkello Witherspoon, Garyon Conley, Jeff Okudah, which I think a lot of his was injury related, but Jeff Okudah as well. I was like, man, these are all my favorite corners. And then I saw Juju Brents' draft, I'm like, oh no, here we go again. I'm just nervous only because of my history with these guys, but
yeah,
look, big, long, athletic corners that can move side to side like that. Yes, he's not going to carry a Tyreek Hill down the field, but if you can just get him in press and you can get him kind of bailing into those cover 3, cover 4 type things, I think he can be a really good corner. So I'm excited for him. But yeah, I think year one with him being the number 1 corner for most of the year is going to be a little rough for at a lot of times here.
Yeah, at least it's a system that doesn't seem to put too much stress on the corners. Like, if they were asking him to follow number 1s around the field, like you'd probably have a lot of issues there. But yeah. All right. Best rookie in 3 years. This is the most fun one, in my opinion.
Obviously, it's Jake Witt. No, we're going to go with
He's
Anthony
on my
Richardson.
list. He's on my list.
You know what? Okay. We'll get to the real one here. But
we have to talk about Jake Witt then.
Man, like, he's the kind of guy that every team wants to take one of these every single draft class, and maybe you have like a 1% chance of it actually working. But if that 1% hits, all right, there we go. So I'm excited for Jake Wood. I'm excited to see what he can do. But for me, obviously it's gonna be a lot of conversation here about Anthony Richardson in the near future and everything like that. But Anthony Richardson was my number 1 quarterback in this class. Wow. I was pounding the table for him the entire cycle. It's just the things that he can do and just the innate things that translate well to playing quarterback. The way that he navigates pressure. We just don't really see many quarterbacks just keep those pressure and sack numbers down like he did last year for such a young quarterback too. I saw very, very promising signs with that. I saw promising signs late in games, him able to hang in there and get the ball out of his hands. Yes, it wasn't always accurate. where I can obviously talk about the accuracy concerns and all that and the struggles with that. But I saw enough of what you really don't see in many players, along with the elite athleticism, the elite arm strength, and what he can be to where I am sold on this. And then throughout the whole offseason, Shane Steichen has been my guy. Even before the Colts hired him, Shane Steichen was my number 1 coaching option throughout the whole offseason. So getting him and meshing that with this quarterback who is just untapped potential, I really think in 3 years from now, we're going to be talking about Anthony Richardson as one of the better quarterbacks. Maybe in the AFC, maybe in the league. Like the AFC is tough right now. It's tough. It's going to be tough for him to get up there with the likes of Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, and obviously Pat Mahomes is the king of it all right now. But that's what you're drafting him to be. You're drafting him, you're giving the big contract to Shane Steichen because you're having the hope that he can get to that level one day. So I'm not going to come on here and say something crazy like he's the next Pat Mahomes or anything like that, but I really do believe in Anthony Richardson. I believe in his character, believe in his ability, and I very much believe in Shane Steichen getting him to where he needs to go. So I think in 3 years from now, Anthony Richardson's going to be a pretty good quarterback in this league.
Yeah, he was at the top of my list as the guy. If we hadn't talked about Richardson yet, I was going to take him there. So I'm glad you did. Third on my list was Jake Witt, so I'm glad we got to sneak him in. He's played football for like a year, and he's like the most athletic tackle prospect we've ever seen. So you gotta throw that dart.
That's great. I love that you had him on there. That's so funny.
Yeah. I will go Josh Downs as my pick here. I loved Josh Downs because another player that I just don't see him failing. The route running is so exceptional. He's going to be in the perfect role here with as that slot player, as you described him earlier. I mean, you already broke him down earlier, so I don't really have to say that much more. But where they got him was exceptional value. I had occasionally had him in, the end of my first round mocks. Like I was very much thought he was that level of a player. So I really think he's going to be one of those high end, like short to intermediate receivers around the league.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I will say about Josh Downs real quick, because I know we got to keep moving on here, but with Downs, what's fascinating about him is, you know that he's going to be a separator, he's going to be able to get open, but the contested catch rate was super high as well. Like he was able to climb the ladder and win those jump balls. And we've seen with wide receiver prospects, if that's the only thing they can do, they're probably going to fail in the league. But when you also have a great separator that can go up and get it, I know I keep throwing this player out there, but Devonta Smith is like that, where he's going to get open, but if he's not, he's going to go up and win those jump balls. Josh Downs, albeit a lot smaller, even somehow than Devonta Smith, he can go up and win those jump balls. So that's why I'm really intrigued by him. And I've kind of gotten a lot better with his prospect profile going forward. And since the Colts have drafted him.
Totally. Yeah. So, as a Colts insider, I wanted to get a little bit of the scoop on some of these big question marks here. So Isaiah Rodgers obviously making some pretty big headlines with the sports gambling. I can't even really say like accusations at this point because he came out and tweeted like, "Yeah, I did it," before anything came through. So, where does it seem like we're at with that? And is there any chance of him playing this year at all? Do you think?
Yeah, so I would be really shocked if he played for the Colts ever again after this. If he played for anybody this upcoming season, it seems like if these allegations are true, he made what was the quote in the headline? Pervasive amount of bets or something like that over the past year. Like it was well over 100 bets is what people have been reporting. He had his friend making the bets for him basically, or he used his friend's account essentially. And while most of the bets range between, I want to say they were like $5 to $25. There was one pretty big bet in there as well that we don't know if that was on the Colts or not, or where that. But it doesn't really matter, who that's on. If you're betting on NFL games that you have an impact on, so it could have been a $5 bet on the Colts winning or losing, you have an impact on that game. So it's clearly a major issue. And I think what people are forgetting here is like with a lot of these things, with Calvin Ridley's, for instance, he was not really with the team when he was making that bet. And it was that one bet, I'm not saying that he did nothing wrong or anything like that, but it was the one bet. Jameson Williams was betting on a different sport within the Lions facility and they got half a year suspension. So what is Isaiah Rodgers going to get betting on Colts games
while he's playing
in those games? It's going to be a pretty massive suspension. And it's weird, when you're someone covering a team and you're covering like you're covering an entire league basically, so it's even tougher for you. We kind of have to view players as assets a little bit, and we have to view them more as like video game characters. It's like Madden characters, because like as someone who covers the Colts, I have to view everything from this team perspective and how the team can win, how they can lose, how they can get better. And when you see something like this come out, it's like, this guy did something really stupid and the Colts are losing a big asset for it. But the human aspect, Isaiah Rodgers is a guy I've known for years. I've interviewed him multiple times. He was texting me once when he was going to the Indianapolis Zoo on his off day, which he's a cool guy. Like it's just made a really dumb mistake. And like all the Josh Gordon stuff years ago, he's never going to play. He might never play in the league again. So it really does suck from that perspective. And it sucked from the team perspective because they lost a corner that was likely going to start for them this next year. So, to answer your question, I really don't think he's going to play in the NFL at all this next season, maybe ever again. And I think from what I've kind of heard, the Colts are going to release him the second the suspension comes down. So who knows if he ever gets his shot again in the NFL, which it's unfortunate because he's a really good player, good player. Yeah.
Well, basically, all I heard there was you're the friend of his that was making the bets for him. So
him down in Florida, he was coming onto my phone in Virginia here and making the bets. That's what it was.
Yeah, no, it's such a bummer. But thanks for the update. And then Darius Leonard as well. You were telling me kind of before we were scheduling this that there's definitely some questions on his timeline. So where are we at with, Shaq Leonard?
Yeah, Shaquille
For the
Leonard.
Colts.
Okay. I was gonna have to correct you there because we keep
Yeah.
changing linebacker names, keep changing. Luckily, Zaire Franklin, EJ Speed, they still have kept their first names and or last names or whatever there. But
Oh, you can't change EJ Speed. That's
that's
too
true.
good.
That's true. That is a good one right there. But no, with Shaquille Leonard, it's really not the case of like we're expecting him to miss the whole season again. It's just we don't know what to expect right now with him. He still has not practiced whatsoever since his latest surgery that kind of cleaned up all the messes of surgeries he had last year, which limited him to, I think, 2 games on the season, at 1 or 2 games. So he did not play much at all last year. And the couple games he did play, he played very sparingly before he got shut down again because of issues with those previous surgeries. So we're talking about a major invasive surgery of the nerves in his back to kind of correct issues in his calf as well and his lower half. Like this is a very, very major invasive nerve surgery in his back. And a lot of that is him building up confidence, building up his ability to move again, building up what he was, before. So it's a long process for him. And we really don't have much clarity on when he's even going to touch the practice field again. So a lot of the questions with that aren't really like, oh, we have to expect Shaquille Leonard to miss the season. It's more of like, we just don't know when he's going to be on the field again, which I know this kind of segues to a later one thing you want to talk about, but it kind of opens the door for a guy like EJ Speed,
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I honestly didn't really know that it was that serious. So that's definitely good information to have. But yeah, let's switch over to some fun conversations about like camp battles. So we came up with 4 positions that look like they're going to be, I guess, open competition, if you will. But let's start at quarterback. Who do you think wins the camp battle between Richardson and Gardner Minshew?
This is actually the most interesting one because it's really not going to be who is the better player that's going to win here necessarily. It's going to be, is Richardson look like he's good enough to start? It's not even if he is outright better than Gardner Minshew. It's, do we feel comfortable putting him out there, and do we have a game plan that's not going to overwhelm him from day one? So that's more of the question here. It's more of Anthony Richardson versus Anthony Richardson throughout camp to see if he could start week 1. I do know that everything with the Colts right now is they are planning on getting him up to speed to start week 1. They want him to start week 1. They want him to learn through fire, basically, baptized by fire, learn on the field, like we have seen some quarterbacks do in the past. Justin Herbert obviously started week 2 of his rookie season. I think Josh Allen, he either started week 1 or week 2 as well of his rookie season. We have seen a lot of guys kind of get thrown out there early on and, take some of their lumps here and there, but in the end, it kind of proved to be a little bit better for them. So I think Anthony Richardson's going to get there. I do think the team is liking which way he's going. I think we trust Shane Steichen's ability to draw up the game plan that's going to be very run heavy, very quarterback run heavy as well, to make sure that he doesn't have too much of a load on him throwing the ball. But yeah, I think if they get even a semblance of good play in the preseason or a semblance of him being somewhat ready, he'll be out there week 1, week 2, week 3, and be that starting quarterback.
Yeah, I think with Steichen, like if it was any different scheme, maybe would have a little more hesitation. But with how much we saw him cater to Jalen Hurts' skill set, I feel like he's just going to be so much. Just forget about where Richardson's at for a second. Steichen's just going to be like, yeah, I want to call plays for Richardson, not for Gardner Minshew. So
right. And Gardner's not even like a bad quarterback. It's just,
no, not at all.
We saw those 2 games he started last year. Like, look how limited the Eagles' offense looked in those 2 games, and that's not even with Minshew playing horribly. Like Minshew's a fine quarterback to have in your quarterback room. If anything were to happen to Anthony Richardson or to Jalen Hurts last year, this is one of the better options you can have. It's just nothing replaces that dynamic ability that a quarterback has, where they're an elite athlete along with having that elite deep ball and that big arm. So I think Shane Steichen's going to want to play with that toy a little bit early.
Yeah. What about at right guard? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, so as of right now, pretty much every first team snap has been going to Will Fries, who was the de facto starter for the last half of last season. I'm not going to sit here and say he played amazing, but it was definitely better than what we saw early in the year from Danny Pinter and from Matt Pryor, the couple games he got put in there at right guard. So Will Fries, he's a young player that kind of improved as the year went along and the more starts he got. Very similar to Bernhard Raimann over at left tackle, where Bernhard Raimann, his first couple starts were just atrocious, and then he became a pretty solid starting tackle by the end of the year. So I think the plan is to get him to be the right guard again. Will Fries at right guard, but Emil Kior, undrafted free agent out of Alabama. I know a lot of people really liked him. Injuries kind of led to his slip to the undrafted range. And if he has a really good camp, I wouldn't put it past the Colts starting him. But I do think Will Fry is going to hold him off at least early on. But if he struggles, Emil Kior, if he makes the team, is going to have a wide open chance to be a starter.
Yeah. I think it's either Fries or Kior if he's healthy. Okay, and then what about the cornerback room? We obviously we talked about how we don't expect Isaiah Rodgers to be there, so you basically have 2 open jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they just go with Rush and Brents?
I think as of right now, Brents is locked in as a starter. Once he gets back on the field, he's been dealing with a forearm injury, so he hasn't really touched the field too much. But I think they said he's going to be good by the time training camp rolls around. So, yeah, I can't imagine Brents not being one of those 2 starters. And then on the other side, it really is open competition. Darius Rush, I think, has the inside track, but Dallas Flowers is an undrafted free agent they like from last season. Didn't really get too much run on defense, but he was a big-time kick returner for the team throughout the year. And then they got Jalen Jones, a 7th-round pick they took out of Texas A&M. Had some fans in the draft community. Not the most athletic guy overall, but very feisty, feisty, shorter armed corner, I guess is the way I could say it with him.
Sure.
Very compact player, just shorter arms there. And SEC guy as well. And then you got Tony Brown as well. Tony Brown might be competing in there. We all know and love Tony Brown. But I think it's going to be open competition. I would lean towards Darius Rush because of what I said earlier on this show here. But it's going to be wide open competition there for that cornerback too, and to see who gets kind of beat up on throughout the year.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go on a limb. I think Jalen Jones wins it. I do. I was one of those guys that really liked Jalen Jones. I think Rush has the upside for sure to eventually, even this year, maybe overtake him. But man, I thought Jalen Jones understood the position better than most corners in this class. I think he fits that size profile that they are going to like here. So yeah, I think it kind of reminds me a little bit to a lesser degree, like what we saw in Buffalo last year, where it wasn't Matt Elam out there starting week 1. It was the 7th rounder out of Villanova that kind of surprised people. But it's going to be, I think it'll probably be between Rush and Jones, in my opinion. Like you said, Jalen Jones was 3rd on my list for most impactful rookie as we were doing that earlier. So.
I like Jalen. I was actually just watching all 22 of him before we jumped on here because I was going to write up an article on him. He's a competitive player, man. He reminds me a lot of Rock Ya-Sin in a lot of ways. When Rock Ya-Sin came out for Indy, he's not as good of a tackler. His tackling technique needs to be cleaned up, but just a feisty, experienced corner that understands how to work in press, understands his landmarks and zone coverage. Like, that's the type of guy you take a shot on in 7th round. And yeah, I was a big Jalen Jones fan as well for what he was. I didn't think he was some elite corner, but as like an early day 3 guy, I actually liked him there as well.
Mm-hmm. And then the last group was the safety room. I'll let you take the floor. I think Julian Blackmon's probably a lock, and then you're looking at a conversation between the other 2 guys there.
Actually, I would say the most locked in guy is probably Rodney Thomas at free safety. Yeah, Rodney Thomas, man, 7th-round pick out of Yale. Very, very good rookie season. Had 3 interceptions on the year. Really solidified that free safety spot. And then the kind of competition there is at strong safety, where Julian Blackmon is moving over to strong safety this year. He's the de facto starter as of right now. But then you got Nick Cross, where it's like really disappointing rookie season. But if he can have a good camp and he can prove to be trustworthy to these coaches, you have to have that speed and athleticism out there on the field. So that's where the main competition is. It's Nick Cross versus Julian Blackmon. I would lean Blackmon here just because that experience, and he's the most veteran guy in that room, despite only being 23 himself. I think he's turning 24 here soon.
That's crazy.
He's the most experienced on the field in that safety room, but it wouldn't shock me to see Nick Cross really put it together. He's just a guy where the mental aspect needed to be worked on last year, and he needed to get in the right spot mentally. So if he can do that, yeah, he can be a really good, strong safety in Indy.
Cool. This is why we bring you on, man, because I was figuring it was going to be another year of free safety for Julian Blackmon. So good to know.
Yeah. Ronnie Thomas, man, he was actually the reason why Julian Blackmon was kept off the field last year. Like, Ronnie Thomas had a really good season.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's now do one breakout player from both of us on both sides of the ball to wrap things up here. So I'll give you the first pick offensively, which I'm a little bit scared of because I don't have a whole lot of people on offense.
The problem with breaking out on this Colts offense is there's so much depending on the quarterback play.
Oh,
Like,
and sorry to cut you off. I meant to tell you before we sat down. No rookies for this. Does that change your?
yeah, no, it doesn't. It
Okay.
doesn't because I think to a degree, it's hard to say breakout because he had a solid rookie season. But I'm gonna go with Alec Pierce on offense here.
Okay.
I'm assuming you're gonna go like Jelani or something there, which
We'll see. We'll see.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But I'm going to go with Alec Pierce. And the main reason is I've watched a lot of Shane Steichen over the last couple of seasons. And to refute whatever, if there is a contrary, if there's a popular belief out there that people think that he's a dink and dunk type of coach or whatever, no, he's not. They love to air it out. Now, last year they did kind of lean in the quick game and the RPO game because when they did throw the ball deep to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, it was a massive success. So they wanted to keep those a little more limited to increase that efficiency. But throughout pretty much every single year that Shane Steichen has been an offensive play caller, his quarterbacks have ranked in the top 10, sometimes the top 5, and I think the last 2 years in the top 3 in deep pass attempts of over 20 yards. Like, his quarterbacks are going to rip it down the field. And even look at Jalen Hurts' his first season with Shane Steichen, his first full season as a starter. I think he was first in the NFL in pass attempts over 20 yards.
Wow.
Jalen Hurts' entire offense that Shane Steichen built around him was quarterback run, RPO, deep ball. That was it. And they made the playoffs that year with that offense. That's all they did. They were just ripping it every other play down the field. And it was super inefficient, but it was down the field. Now, coming to Indy, Alec Pierce lives for that. Alec Pierce had very few chances down the field last year, but when he got those chances, he was going up and he was taking that ball away. Like,
yeah,
Matt Ryan was throwing some ducks up to him, but he was going up and getting it. And he was beating some pretty good corners down the field. I mean, Jalen Watson, he had a really good deep catch against there in against Kansas City, who was a really promising young corner. Benjamin St-Juste in Washington, he beat him in press for a deep ball down the field. Like, Alec Pierce, I think, has some good things about him, and I think he can be a really good vertical type player. I don't think he's going to get more than like 50 catches on the season, depending on whoever the quarterback is. But could we see more downfield shots and less of the trying to get him involved underneath when that's really just not who he is? He's a vertical guy. He's a vertical guy. And bringing Shane Steichen and maybe Anthony Richardson this year, where it's just going to be ripping it down the field to him and giving him those chances, like, we could see some really good things from Alec Pierce. Maybe not not some 1,000-yard season, but maybe 700, 800 yards if things go right. Like, I think we could see that from him.
Yeah. I was doing a Colts franchise just for fun with Anthony Richardson, and I changed Alec Pierce's number to 87 to look like Jordy Nelson. I was just like, this is just so perfect. He turned into like a 5-time All-Pro for me, just.
Yeah, the problem is we can't do that here because we got Reggie Wayne's number retired, I think, or it's about to be retired.
Right.
It's like sort of retired, I think. I don't know if it's officially retired yet.
No, that's sacrilegious. You can't do that.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go with Will Fries. I am optimistic there.
Okay.
Yeah. I liked what I saw. I was just getting through that Pittsburgh game. He's not perfect, but it was last year's rookie year or the year before? This is year 3?
This is year 3. So his rookie season, he was behind Chris Reed and Mark Lewinsky. So he didn't. I think he played one game against Arizona that first year, and then last year was his de facto rookie season, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think them showing that confidence in him says a lot because they really didn't do much to challenge him. He has an amazing group around him to help, and I don't know. I'm just kind of optimistic about that spot. Is really all it comes down to. I saw some play strength, saw some good hand placement. I think there's something there for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's flip over to the defense, and I think you know who I'm going to pick for this one because I skipped the topic that I sent to you on this player.
Yeah.
So I'll just take him now selfishly and make you have a hard pick after that. I'm going to go EJ Speed. Talk about watching all 22, getting ready for this. I was like, holy shit. Like, what? He is insane. Like, the highlight reel that I'm able to put together from 3 games of him is like it looks like a freaking Pro Bowl linebacker out there. The way he reads the run, he's quick. He's not like necessarily strong, but he has that natural instinct to just kind of navigate traffic and find the ball. I think getting a full-time, if he gets a full-time, I mean, that's the big question, right? Is Darius Leonard out there? Is he, is the same like last year? Is Zaire Franklin taking snaps away from him? That's certainly what I think would be the biggest detractor from this happening. But if he's on the field, I saw a really fast, explosive linebacker at a position that takes 3 years or so to really get up to speed and understand what to do. And he's at that point. He just got a contract extension here. I know Brett Coleman loves him as well. So like there's another eyeball that sees a similar thing. It's like, man, I saw a lot there and could surprise some people for sure.
Yeah, I'll touch on this real quick and then I'll pick my guy. But with EJ Speed, it's fascinating. If you look at Zaire Franklin's situation going into last year, it mirrors so much of EJ Speed, where Zaire Franklin going to last year got that extension to be the special teams captain, to be a reserve linebacker. And he's expected to be that third linebacker behind Shaquille Leonard and Bobby Okereke. Shaquille Leonard goes down with his injury throughout the whole year. Zaire Franklin steps in and he becomes their guy. He breaks the franchise record for tackles in the season, improves in pass coverage throughout the year. Zaire Franklin was a good player and became kind of that vocal leader on that defense. Now we're at the situation where Bobby Okereke is in New York. And Shaquille Leonard, we still have no clue what's going on. You got EJ Speed, who just got that contract extension to be a special teamer and that third linebacker. He might get a chance to be a starter for a majority of the season. And I've been telling people, if he's a starter throughout the whole year, they're going to have a really good run defense. He's going to be, because he is a menace in the run game, just an absolute menace in the run game. And if they can get him up to speed in the pass game, I mean, he can be a really good linebacker. And having him and Zaire Franklin next to each other, you're going to have one of the faster linebacker tandems just because of how quick they are coming downhill. It might not be these bulldozer guys that can run through blocks and can carry guys 50 yards down the field, but if they see run, they're going to fill those gaps extremely fast and get downhill. So it'd be really fun to see both those guys on the field if, this whole Shaquille Leonard thing is still an unknown come season time. But the guy I'm going to touch on real quick is Ronnie Thomas II, the guy who last year, again, 3 interceptions, playing that free safety role for the Colts. I think that was like second or third most among all rookie defensive players for the Colts in franchise history. Really strong season. I really, really was impressed by this Yale product who played linebacker in college, played nickel corner in college. He comes in, he's throwing at free safety in a Gus Bradley defense where that's one of the most important overall positions on the entire team. And honestly, I thought there was so much room to grow still, where you're watching him and it's like, he knows what he's doing. He has the instincts. He has the speed. He has the physical ability, but he's kind of, he's playing a little too far back at times. He's trying not to get beat deep, which is fine. Like, that's fine. But once he gets more playing time and he develops those instincts, this can be a really good free safety for the Colts. So I think we're going to see an even better season. Maybe he doesn't hit the 3 interceptions because those are such a volatile thing to kind of keep up every year, unless you're Shaquille Leonard, who somehow always gets interceptions falling into his lap. But with Rodney Thomas, I just think he has the potential to be that kind of lockdown, takeaway, deep safety in the Gus Bradley defense, where the middle of the field is not open for you guys. It's very close because Rodney Thomas covers a lot of ground. He's going to hit you if you try to throw it over the middle. So of all the Colts defenders, I do think there are some breakout candidates. Dio Dangbo is another one we could talk about. EJ Speed, I think it's a great pick there. You can go with any of these rookie corners that are going to get opportunities, but Rodney Thomas II, man, if he can build off that rookie season he just had with more confidence and more playing time, I think he can be a legit free safety.
I love it. All right, Zach, this was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Everybody, make sure you go check out the Locked On Colts podcast. Find him on Twitter. What's the handle, Zach?
At Zach Hicks 2. I think I could go to at Zach Hicks now because old Elon has been deleting some old counts, so I might be able to take Zach Hicks. But we're gonna stick with Zach Hicks 2 for now, I think. So we'll see.
All right, thank you for coming on, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace out.